Late one evening, Mark, a diligent cab driver who was having financial difficulties, noticed a distressed woman. She needed a ride badly and was crying while holding her young child. Sensing that she was going through a difficult moment, Mark drove her home and refused to take any money. He had no idea how quickly this tiny gesture of goodwill would alter his life in ways he could not have predicted. A few hours later, he received a shocking piece of news on his phone. "Welcome to my channel, everyone. I'm thrilled to tell you a fresh story today." Mark kept thinking about the mother and her child as he lay in bed later that night. Since he needed every bit of money he could get, he rarely refused payment, but something about her circumstances felt different. Though he realized he might never find out, he pondered what had brought her to that point and why she had been so upset. His phone buzzed on the nightstand as he was falling asleep. Receiving a call so late was out of the ordinary, and Mark hesitated for a second, but he felt compelled to respond. He didn't know the voice on the other end of the call. It was calm but urgent. The voice said, "Are you Mark, the cabbie?" Bewildered, Mark acknowledged that it was him. "I'm calling on behalf of the woman I drove home earlier that evening," the caller claimed. A beat skipped through his chest. "Had she been harmed?" The man went on. "She's safe. But we need to talk about something important. She told us about what you did for her, even though she didn't want to tell her tale previously. It's something that people will remember." Mark was now completely awake and sat up in bed. His mind was racing. What might this signify? The man clarified that although the woman he had assisted's family was extremely affluent, she had been cut off from them for years as a result of a personal tragedy. She had fallen on hard times and was attempting to support herself without their help. She had been going through a lot, and that night she had reached her breaking point. The caller stated, "She was going through one of the most difficult times in her life, and when she most needed it, you, Mark, were kind to her." Mark's thoughts were racing. Why was he being taught all of this now, when he had just done what he believed to be right? The man hesitated before he could ask any more questions before revealing the shocking information. The woman's family had heard about his gesture and wanted to see him. Mark's mind was racing. Since all he did was decline payment for a ride, he couldn't understand why this family wanted to meet him. However, he sensed that there was more to the tale. He was given an address by the individual on the phone, who also requested if he could meet them the following day. Mark paused, uncertain of what to anticipate, but ultimately, his curiosity won over. The following morning, Mark was standing before a stately home, the kind of establishment he had only ever seen from the outside while he was transporting clients through the affluent areas of the city. He never would have thought that he would be entering a house like this. He rang the bell nervously. An older man in a suit, the same voice from the phone, greeted him as the door opened in a matter of seconds. "Thank you for coming, Mark," the man added, grinning broadly. He identified himself as John, a close friend of the family. Mark couldn't help but notice the pricey artwork on the walls, the polished flooring, and everything else about the property that shouted luxury as he followed him inside. The woman from the previous evening was waiting for them when they entered a spacious sitting area. She appeared calmer now, with the grief that had gripped her the previous evening no longer visible on her face. As Mark came closer, she got to her feet, her eyes full of appreciation. She started, "Mark, I'm not sure how to express my gratitude. I was at my lowest point last night. The way I was going to survive was unknown before you. You simply assisted me. You didn't ask for anything in return. Few people I know would act in that way." Mark stirred uneasily. For what he perceived to be a small act of generosity, he wasn't used to getting so much attention. John, however, interrupted him before he could reply. "Mark, there's something you should know. Despite their wealth, This family has had many hardships and tragedies of their own. You did more than you thought when you assisted her last night. You served as a reminder that decent people still exist. Still not sure where this was headed, Mark listened. However, John then broke the news, which left him stunned. John seemed to be searching for the appropriate words as he stopped. He continued by saying, "The family you assisted is not only very affluent but also very powerful. They own a number of companies in the city. However, they have always supported giving back to people who are helpful without asking anything in return and utilizing their money to aid others." Mark was perplexed. It was merely an act of kindness, and he had never asked for anything in return. "They've decided that your act of kindness shouldn't go unnoticed," John added. "They wish to present you with a chance that could change your life." Mark's heart pounded. Changed your life? What on earth do they mean by that? He had never thought that a single, insignificant act might result in such a big impact. He paid close attention as John stated that the family had decided to give him a present of money, enough to settle all of his debts and ensure his future. It wasn't just money, though. Additionally, they were giving him a job in one of their companies, a chance to have a steady career with a decent salary and room for advancement. Mark was taken aback. It seemed as though all of his hardships were abruptly being lifted. After years of putting in long hours at work and barely making ends meet, his entire life was suddenly being turned around. The woman got up and came over to him. "Although you didn't realize it, you gave me hope that night. Your generosity served as a reminder that there are still decent people in the world, even though I felt like I had lost everything. This is how we express our gratitude." Mark was at a loss for words. He had always thought that being good was a reward in and of itself, but suddenly he was receiving something far more than he could have ever dreamed. He learned that sometimes the smallest actions can have the biggest impact, both on others and on yourself. With his head still spinning from what he had heard, Mark left the meeting in shock. He was offered not only financial stability, but also a position that would transform his life, and he had stopped worrying about how he would pay his next expense. Even though it all seemed like a dream, it was true, and it all began with a small deed of generosity. Mark started his new position at the family firm as the days went by. Although it was difficult at first, he soon picked up the skills and discovered that he enjoyed the work. He wasn't burdened by the ongoing strain of financial difficulties for the first time in years. He could now look forward to a future that had previously seemed so far off. But more than the cash or the position, Mark was left with the impression that his generosity had truly changed someone's life. He remained in contact with the woman and her family, and over time, they developed into more than simply business partners. They grew close. Mark was accepted into a group of individuals that valued him for who he was as well as for what he had accomplished. Mark came to a significant realization one evening while sitting at home and thinking back on all that had transpired. He had experienced hardship in life, but he had never allowed it to diminish his empathy for other people. Ultimately, that empathy had brought him possibilities he never would have imagined. Kindness has a true ripple effect and occasionally has the power to transform your life in unexpected ways. That was demonstrated by Mark's narrative. Did you enjoy this story? For more, hit the like button and become a subscriber to my channel. Please share your thoughts on this tale in the comments section using just one word.